seems it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage a folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The paupers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
My time in Marietta, and I would say this is true for all people, and you know, is a chapter. Like when you live in a place, when you move in to the moment you move out, that is a very objective chapter of your life. You know, all the stuff that happened when you live there. And I'm a Cancer rising, so home life is really significant to me. Like that's the astrological theory, and I know that from my own experience. And so when I move homes, it's a big deal. And moving into that place, and in my 4 years in Marietta was a very significant time in my life. Not necessarily the easiest, but certainly probably the most significant. And so I moved to this place, and I knew that that chapter was ending, and this new chapter was beginning. And the old chapter is most I could say is colored by this whole Susquehanna mystery sort of thing. But that's kind of, you know, I've been with that for a while. Like I stopped researching that maybe about 1.5 years ago, and like I'll still go and talk about it, but it's not where a lot of my mind goes. But when I came here, and the fact that we're planning this event in June, like there's a new energy, a new what I'm going to say is part 2 of the Susquehanna mystery. I'm like, all right, I guess this is like part 2. And then
this
and this.
Can I just add? That's like the hero's journey. There's always a pause from the quest where the hero, you know, goes and does whatever else, gathers energy, like gives up, and then comes back or whatever it is. So,
well, there you go.
There we go.
and so now this circle, you know, going back to like, is this a sign for myself? You know, whether it's time travel or what have you, like, you know, is that it? But my or what is it? That's a marker, if you will. Yeah. And what my sense is right now is, and kind of where I left things with the Susquehanna mystery is like, I don't know what it is. That's why it's a mystery. I just know that everything is pointing to here, and I don't know why. And I know it has to be something tangible, like not, but tangible slash etheric. It's not just like, you know, there's a hidden, like a buried treasure of gold, but there's something else. And this idea, and I've said this a bunch about like the Susquehanna mystery, is like, you know, there's something to do with like an opening, a portal, like, you know, a way which a lot of like the stuff which I think a lot about what they talk about on Crow Radio with the moon, and on the equinoxes being like possibly like an opening within reality where you can do stuff.
I didn't even think about that when I was picking a date. I was just like, that's a cool day to celebrate. But yeah, you're right.
And that's why I think the part 2 of this research is going, is like, okay, now that you know that this is a place,
do something.
there's more now. You know what to look for, and there's and to make it even one step further, like, you know, assuming everything which we're seeing happening in Iran, like, you know, there's implications that maybe we're about to step up. You know, they've set the stage for World War III to begin. And if it's not that, the stuff that's going on in Virginia right now, like, you know, is that going to be the
Civil War,
the spark that'll start a civil war?
Right.
Or this is the year of the worldwide rollout of 5G. Is that it? You know, are they all going to happen together?
Yeah.
And if that's going to happen, you know, as one door shuts, a window opens, as the saying goes. I'm like, well, now would be the time when we begin to start understanding like the other rules or the laws of the reality we live in, and how we can work around it. And I think this ties in very much to like Max Eigen's work. Like, you know, when we talk about like the mud flood, I love how he positions it. He's like, I don't know what it is, but I know there's stuff there.
Yeah.
And we have to go and we have to look, and we have to be real with it, and we want real results. But so that's kind of where I am right now with my mind in terms of what's capturing my attention. And this then all ties into, I think, what we're going to be doing at David's place.
Yeah.
And
Which, can I just add, I think it's amazing that he's like a shamanic, like, you know, that type of person and that energy, and that he wants to kind of be involved in this and help kind of open and close it. And I had talked to you before about asking you to help open and close it. And then when I realized that, you know, this is his property and his space and we're sort of coming into it, then I figured it would be really good to have him do like an opening and closing ceremony, so that we're all like invited in properly to this space, so that whatever sort of positive energy that he's put into it will be, you know, accessible to us, or at least inviting to us, or at least not like, you know what I mean?
I agree completely. And it gets some skin, it gets his skin in the game.
Yeah.
I know David because our children go to the same school.
Oh, wow.
And it's a Waldorf school. Are you familiar?
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. I love that.
So, and Waldorf is all based upon the teachings of Steiner.
Yes. Isn't it very nature based as well?
Yes. Well,
yeah.
that's a big part of it. And what's interesting is this guy, Alan, who I gave the cinder blocks to, Steiner is within regenerative agriculture. He's considered like a thought leader, or was a thought leader, into something which is known as biodynamics, I think is what they call it.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's real. And Alan tells me this stuff. Alan's a documentary filmmaker. Like, that's his job. Like, and so he's like very grounded in like material reality, but this regenerative stuff like really scratches an itch for him. And like this is an example of like what they do. They talk about the sacred cow and how you get the cow. That's like the most important thing in the farm. And you get, I guess a cow doesn't have a horn, but something, you get a horn. Oh, you get like a ram's horn, and you fill it with cow shit, and then you bury it at like this key point of your property as it relates to like these celestial happenings. And like that's how you lock in celestial energy into the soil. And like, I mean, like really kind of like what people would say would be out there ideas. And so
I love that though, because that's like what you were saying about kind of mixing the material and the practical with a sort of etheric and mystic magical sort of.
And David fits in there, and I know David okay. I don't know him that well, and I think I said to you before, like I can't tell if he thinks I'm nuts or not.
He can't think you're nuts. He's a shamanic guy building eco like villages. I feel like you two would be like a perfect match.
In some ways, yes. But then like what I'm implying, or what I talked to him about, like the 40th parallel and the Susquehanna River, like.
He's just like, yeah.
He lives there. Like, he doesn't seem like there's nothing special here, you know.
Yeah.
he hasn't made that connection, you know. And, you know, at least that's my opinion. But, like, we have a nice rapport. I've been to his place a few times, and I know him. And, like, obviously I had we're good enough friends to have his number.
Yeah.
And I think it's fantastic that he is going to be involved with it. And he is, he's got a nice influence in the immediate area also, like within his sphere of influence, which could also be if potential people who are going to come to this as well.
Oh, cool.
So so with all that said, I wanted to did you see the email I sent you?
Yeah, I have it pulled up on my screen here.
All right, fantastic. I'm going to go and do you want to jump right into that? Can we talk about that?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. And this is what I'm hoping to accomplish is I want you with your rational mind, with your thinking mind, to really understand all of the signs that point to the place where we're going to do this. You know, I want you to see them and understand it, so that as we become more and more involved with this, as this becomes more of a reality, as it steps into really happening, you're going to also understand like this is why this location is significant, and you'll have this open mind to like, I don't know what we're looking for, but we're looking for something.
Yeah.
So it begins with do you see the slide that they're all a bunch of different slides I made a couple years ago, and the one which is called John Smith's Map of Virginia and the Art of Steganography.
Yes, give me 1 second. Sorry, I had them pulled up, but I didn't have them downloaded, so I can't make them
I'm just looking at them on my email. Like if you
large.
can.
Well, I figure if we do end up sharing this video with people that they might want to see too, so I want to have
Right.
Oh, David is calling me right now.
All right.
Should I answer?
Yeah, definitely.
Hi, David.
Hi, Lindsay.
You're on speakerphone, and I'm talking with Michael Wan, actually, if that's okay.
Oh, nice. Nice. Hello. Yeah,
Hey, David, how are you?
Can you hear him?
I can hear David. I don't know if he can hear me. David, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you, Mike?
I'm good.
Good. So yes, Lindsay, I was just getting back to you. I did just make this new fireplace outside.
Yay!
And, yeah, so that will definitely be available.
Perfect. I got
yeah,
scared for a second because
so-
in my vision, there's, you know, we have fires at night, and then I thought, wait, I've never even asked if there's a fireplace, so that's perfect.
Yeah, there is. So, and you know, I plan on being there. So, just to start them, because I have propane ran into the fireplace, so
Perfect.
it makes it easy to start, but there's definitely a technique to it. So, because that flame can really like poof out if you do it wrong.
Okay.
So yeah, so I don't want to light it. But other than that, you know, it's good to go.
Perfect. Okay, great. Well, thank you.
Sure, sure.
Awesome.
And yeah, so I think that was the main question you had, right?
I think so. I think I've answered all the other questions I had myself, maybe. If I think of more, I can just call you back.
Sure, yeah, please do. Don't hesitate.
Awesome.
But all right, well, thank you, Lizzie, and anyway, blessings, Mike.
He said blessings.
I don't know.
Mike.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Well, have a good day.
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm in Florida. I've kind of gotten a little down on the weather, but I'm doing okay. But yeah, I enjoyed a nice day at the beach, and now I'm getting ready to drive towards Orlando. So.
Oh, well, I hope you feel better and enjoy the beaches down there.
Yeah, thanks. No, I did. It's been a nice reprieve. I
Yes.
fly back on Tuesday. So.
A couple more days of sunshine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a week of some sunshine, and so it's good.
Awesome.
Yeah, so Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Okay.
All right. Talk to you later.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
See you, David.
Auspicious timing.
Exactly. It's funny. I saw there was someone wrote on the I think it was the Eyes Wide Open group. I don't really go on Facebook that often unless
Not Eyes Wide Open. That's like sex orgy weirdness.
Oh,
Just
Eyes
eyes open.
But you know, so someone did wrote a question about time. Was this just the other day?
Hmm.
And
I don't know.
we responded to it. It was like a thread. They were talking about it, and I was thinking I wanted to respond, but I didn't. But I was like, yes, timing. Time is not. Time is one of my favorite topics, but time is arbitrary, but timing is everything.
Yeah.
And
I
you're
love
right. The timing of David's call is fantastic.
It is fantastic. I just had a sort of you can call it a past life regression if you want to. I think that's what this person calls it, but it was more like a really intense Reiki meets like really intense trauma therapy.
Okay.
And I just had this last night, and there were different aspects about it that were like, it was just the perfect time to do it. We've been talking about doing it, me and this person, for months and months and months, and it finally happened. And I was on day 3 of the master cleanse, and so I was like very ready to kind of release trauma and toxics, build up, and in that state of mind where I was very, very clear. And so it was just perfect. And I said, we couldn't have planned it better if we tried. And he said, well, we did plan it, we just didn't know we planned it. And I was like, that's true.
There we go. Yeah, when you're working in that realm.
Right. We should do an episode on time, actually, come to think of it. I'm making a note.
Time.
All right, so which one was I pulling up?
You were, I don't know what it's, I'm looking at the picture. I think it's called John Smith, Map of Virginia and the Art of Steganography. I don't know what the file is called.
Got it.
You got it up?
Yes.
All right. So do you see the map in the upper left-hand corner?
Yes.
And so that's where everything begins. And this is, have you seen this map before?
I have seen this before on one of your posts or...
Right. I make reference to it a lot. So this is, it is accredited to John Smith, who was the leader of Jamestown, the Jamestown settlement. It's called the John Smith Map of Virginia. And what you see in it, that's the Chesapeake Bay. That's what that large body of water is. And north is to the right on the map as opposed to the top of the map, how we normally see maps, oriented. And this map is really significant for, we could spend hours talking on it. It's so rich with information, but
and symbolism.
Yes. And so we're going to talk about a couple things and why it's so important. So the first thing why it's important is the context. Jamestown was the beginning of both the British Empire and of what would become the United States, which are arguably, they've never been separated to begin with. But this is kind of like what we have as the Jamestown in itself as a marker of that beginning. And then John Smith is the leader, is really significant. And we know that he's important because Disney makes movies about him. He's the guy from Pocahontas. And the upper left-hand corner of the map, you'll see it's kind of the Pocahontas story. And the first thing which we want to kind of put into context is like, who is really behind this map? Yeah. And it's accredited to John Smith, but John Smith, his skill set is not as a cartographer. He wasn't a map maker. What his skill set was, assuming he was a real person, is that he was a leader of men and he was an explorer. He had those type of skill sets. And the people who were behind Jamestown, like Jamestown didn't just happen, it was funded. And it was funded by something called the Virginia Company of London. And the Virginia Company of London was given a charter from King James himself to go and colonize the New World. And so, it's like no different than like Halliburton getting a sweet contract for Iraq. You know what I mean? It's like, right. All right, this is our stuff. Here, you go take it, and you'll make you'll get all of the resources. So now let's go down a little bit more. So you have like the Virginia Company of London, which is a real company, a for-profit company, and then they had a board of an executive council is what was called. You could think of it like a board of directors. It was a pretty big group. I think there were like 50 people on it. But though he did not go by title, we can assume by responsibility, Francis Bacon was the chairman of the board. And the reason why I say that is because he wrote the charter, and he also presented on behalf of the Virginia Company to Parliament. And so, how much do you know about Francis Bacon?
I know that he wrote or channeled the Enochian language and was like the court mage.
No, that was John Dee.
Oh, my bad. Why do I
But
think
they're
of
linked.
Francis
They're
Bacon?
linked.
Okay.
They're linked. They're
Okay.
linked. So
That's why.
John Dee was kind of like an advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. And then the next monarch after Queen Elizabeth I was King James. And then Francis Bacon was, he wasn't so much of an advisor as much as he was like an actual employee, but he was like the right-hand man. I think his title was like Lord Chancellor. And he was very, very influential behind the scenes in terms of like King James and the court. And there's a whole bunch of different things all connecting like John Dee and Francis Bacon. There are talks that John Dee may have been Francis Bacon's father. Like, I don't think that's
Wow.
true, but that's put out there. But Francis Bacon, if you were to go and look at, are you familiar with Manly P. Hall's Secret Teaching of All Ages?
Yes.
If you were to go and look in the index, you're going to see like 60 or 70 entries for Francis Bacon.
Wow.
And the reason why I'm saying that is that kind of gives a clue as to his significance as it relates to particularly like that book, which is the encyclopedia, I think it's called the Encyclopedia of Hermetic, Rosicrucian, and Freemasonic and Kabbalistic Symbology and Philosophy. Like Francis Bacon was huge. In terms of his influence. In fact, I think Manly P. Hall even says, he's like, that the name Francis Bacon may not even be one man, but he's kind of like a gathering of all sorts of things are credited to him. And I would say the same way that maybe Ben Franklin, like so much is accredited to Ben Franklin. Like, did really one man do this? Or is all of this stuff being accredited to him? That I don't know. But what we do know is all of this stuff is accredited to Francis Bacon. He's the father of the scientific method. He was the driving force behind the colonization scheme of the New World. He was the final editor of the King James Bible. He's highly suspect as being the true author of the works of Shakespeare. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And so the point I want to make is, and he was the leader of the Rosicrucians, and he also was the architect of modern Freemasonry. So now we're looking at, I like to think of, in the event that we are living in a simulated reality, Francis Bacon would be an OS upgrade. Like, you know how Apple names their OS upgrades like Sierra or whatever. Like, so much of our life, like, you know, all of technology can be traced back to the scientific method. Modern culture, like through Shakespeare, modern mainstream religion through the King James Bible, esotericism through all of this stuff is connected to Francis Bacon. And Francis Bacon connects directly, or maybe indirectly, I say, to this map. And so what history tells us is that John Smith, they arrived in Jamestown, I think in 1607. And then in 1608, maybe 1609, John Smith returns back to London. And he returns back with all of his notes. And he wrote a book, and this map was drawn out and originally published. But it was published in London, and John Smith went back to London. At the exact same time, like this is 1608 to 1610, was when Francis Bacon was working on the King James Bible. There were 39 different editors who wrote the 39 different books. They gave them to King James. King James like, I don't know what to do with this. Here, Bacon, you take this. And Bacon had them for 2 years. And you could go and research. This is very well documented that the King James Bible is just filled with codes. It's filled with Rosicrucian symbology. A lot of like very fundamental Christians that they won't even look at the King James Bible. They say it's an abomination.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not my hot button. I'm just saying this for like context. And the context which I'm trying to put into play is two things. One, that like Francis Bacon has a history of being the final editor and adding clues and like secret messages into documents. And he was working on secret documents at the time this map was in London, and it was released, I think, in 1612. And so like the time Francis Bacon was connected to it, both we know through his involvement with the Virginia Company of London. Of course, the leader of Jamestown is going to come and talk to the chief of the executive board. Of course, just makes common sense. And it only makes common sense that Francis Bacon's going to put his hands all over this. We might not know what they're doing, but we know that they're there, which is one of the reasons why like Max Eigen's, am I pronouncing his name correctly? Is it
I say
Eigen?
Egan.
Egan?
That's what I
Okay,
say, but I'm not sure.
I was just listening to him on the Higher Side chat, so he's top of mind right now. But like the way he presents information, he's like, let's look at maybe what we know and then also what they tell us. So all I know is this is what they're telling us. This is like on like the official historical record. So this map connects to Francis Bacon, and he had his hands on it. And we also know that Francis Bacon was a master of two things. One is a cipher, and a cipher is a code which is just a straight up code, like where one thing equals another thing. And then there's something called steganography, which is a little bit different, where it's more artistic, where you hide secret information in public documents, but like in this kind of artistic way.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to suggest, what we're looking at right here, is a map which Francis Bacon and like this entire Rosicrucian movement, they put steganography, they put clues on there. And there's so much information. Like once you, and I spend so much time with this is because I want you to know, like, this is the logic behind it. Like there's precedent for this. It only makes sense because nowhere else are you going to read what I'm telling you right now. Like this is just like me applying what we know and onto this other thing. So the first thing which we know, or the first clue that there's more going on this map, if you scroll down to the bottom of that flyer, of this slide, you'll see there's a picture of some numbers, and there's a white circle around the number 40.
Yeah.
And you see how it's mirrored.
Yeah. And
you see how the 37 and the 38 and the 39 and 40 are totally normal?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not just backwards. The 4 is pointing the other direction.
Right.
So whenever you mirror something, that's an ancient occultic and magic sort of thing. Like when the number, a great modern example would be, have you seen like the pictures of that Rothschild, what do you call it, costume party from the 70s? And it had like, and if you've ever seen the invitation is completely written in mirrored. Like you have to hold it up to a mirror. Like mirroring is what they do.
Okay.
And then secondly, within the works of Shakespeare, one of the reasons why they, some of the clues in the works of Shakespeare are what are known as the purposeful mispaginations, the purposeful misnumbering. So there is a precedent of misnumbering in steganography or hidden code in works that are associated with Francis Bacon. And so we're seeing it again. Now, at the very least, or at the very beginning, this is seen as like, okay, look deeper within this map. There's something objective telling you that there's more going on behind the scenes. And this is where it all began for me. This is how the whole Susquehanna mystery began. When I saw that reverse 40 and I was like, all right, something's going on. I didn't know nothing about nothing. And then I just followed that. And so the second thing, if you go back and you look at like the overall map, the big map, and arguably what I'm going to say is the most dominant visual feature is the Indian, which you see in the upper right-hand corner. Yeah. And the reason why I say it's the most dominant is because there's nothing in the background. Like you could say, well, look at the Chesapeake Bay. I'm like, yeah, but you can't tell what's going on. There's so much information. Or look at what's in the upper left-hand corner. I'm like, yeah, but there's so much going on and shadows. But this Indian, the upper right-hand corner. Yeah. That is very, very that's
it's allowed to be like contrasted with the negative space.
Yes, yeah. It is. And underneath the feet of the Indian, you could see this next to the 40, it says the Susquehannocks are a giant-like people and thus attired.
Attired.
With, A-tyred.
Which doesn't even make sense.
Exactly. Like if you want to take that literally, it's saying the Susquehannocks are big people and they dress, they're attired, their attire is big.
Okay.
I mean, that would be how I would take it literally.
I thought it was saying they get tired easily because they're large. I was like, that's what? Attired? But yeah, your version makes way more sense.
No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's just my guess. That makes sense. But
either way, it's spelled wrong.
So Francis Bacon is accredited for inventing modern English.
Yeah.
And he invented modern English through two works, the works of Shakespeare and the King James Bible. Something like 10,000 new words were added into the lexicon. And Francis Bacon said, I mean, and the Rosicrucians said this too, they wanted to invent a new language. And what they said was they wanted to create a poetic language. And what they meant by that is a poetic language is when words have multiple meanings. So you can do double entendre. So that, and he was a prolific poet. He wrote, Francis Bacon was. And so Tyre, Tyre, is the key city of the Freemason legend, the story of Hiram Abiff that takes place in Tyre. So now we got Tyre right there.
Okay.
And now we can go and look slightly above the 40. You could see George Washington on the left, and you see the Susquehanna on the right.
Right.
Now, the one on the left, it's from a painting which is called George Washington Lays the Cornerstone of the Capitol, and he's dressed in Freemasonic regalia. Okay.
And he just does not look excited at all.
Correct. He doesn't look excited at all. Now, keep in mind, Scottish Rite Freemasonry, which is what's practiced in the United States, which is different than York Rite. Scottish Rite, the model, the 33 degrees, you know how you hear the 33 degrees? That is all built upon Francis Bacon. Freemasonry, modern Freemasonry came about like in the early 1700s. But before that, there was called speculative Freemasonry, where there are all these different Masonic lodges where they would have their own sort of practices. But like it wasn't until the 1700s that they came up with like, this is how all of the different lodges will do their rituals and so forth. And Scottish Rite is based upon the practice of Freemasonry, which Francis Bacon did. So now we have this Freemasonry connection. And we look at this painting of George Washington, and we see he's got this apron, and it's got a fold over, it's rounded, and it's fringed. And we go and we look at the warrior, and he's got the same apron.
Yeah.
And then we see around George Washington's neck, he's got what's called a collar and a jewel. So that heavy like collar, and then there's a jewel which is hanging. And within Freemasonry, the jewel tells the rank or the status of the individual. So now we go and we look at the Indian, and the Indian's got the same thing.
Yeah.
This picture, so the picture of the Susquehanna is actually from an original picture which goes back to the lost colony of Roanoke, which was maybe, I think, 50 years before. All still connected with the European Empire, or the British Empire, or what would become the British Empire, but they changed it, and they changed the display of this person in two ways. One is they went from beads around the neck, which is normally how you think of like Native Americans, like they have beads. They don't have this heavy duty rope.
Yeah.
And it went from having straight hair to this wavy flowing hair.
Oh.
Okay. So now we go, and I don't want to go down this, but we could talk about it later. What's hanging on the neck of, on the warrior is a wolf head. We know that because there's an accompanying book, and it says it's a wolf head. The wolf head is a Freemasonic symbol, and it goes back to the cults of Isis of ancient Egypt. So now we know that this warrior is connected to the cults of ancient Egypt. And we won't really get into this. The flowing hair is very significant also. It connects to the first dollar or coin dollar in the colonies, which was called the flowing hair dollar, which was of a goddess. I suggest that this warrior is actually a female. It's not a male,
it looks very female.
Yeah, everything is it's goddess. And so, and this is also when we started calling these people the Susquehannocks and the river the Susquehanna. prior to this, you had like 100 different people who called the river 100 different things.
Right.
But it was from this document that it got cemented in history that this is the official name. And this gets important because the Celts, the ancient Celts, when they were, before the Roman Empire took over Europe, France at the time was known as Gaul. They had a holy river, which was known as the Susquehanna. And the people who took care of that river were the Susquehannese, like the Susquehanna and the Susquehannocks. That river is now known as the Seine, which Paris sits on.
Right.
So we're beginning to see all this sort of stuff, but we're not even going to go that deep. What I'm going to suggest, what we see here, and I'm going to cut to the chase. What is hidden in this map is a coordinate system. And it makes sense because if you're going to hide information in the map, and this almost goes to like the whole thing with, like I said earlier, with the circle, like, you know, this is a message for someone in the future.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting that this, what is hidden in this map is a location. What else are you going to hide in a map but a location? You're not going to hide something else. It's pragmatic. You're going to be pragmatic. And what we're given is a coordinate. And the coordinate that we're given is the 40th parallel. We know that because there's this reversed 40,
Right.
and the Susquehanna River. We know it's this. One of the reasons why we know it's the Susquehanna River is within the secret teachings of all ages, which was a key tool to deciphering this map. It talks about how the Rosicrucians used for steganography. They would often have like a character who would be the key to deciphering the code, and they would point to where you would go and begin your decoding. Like a finger would point somewhere, something like that. And if you could look at the close up above if you could see where the Susquehannock warrior is standing next to George Washington.
Yes.
Over the warrior's head is another square. Do I have it there? No, that's not where I have it. No, that is where I have it. I've made so many of these different sheets. That's why I'm getting confused. Okay. Well, the bottom line is, in this warrior's hand is this bow. And on the bottom of the bow it is resting on the source location of the Susquehanna River, which is why I'm suggesting the warrior who's going by the same name as the river is a double entendre of the river. They use double entendre. We know that that's their style. And they're pointing, and he's pointing at the river. She's pointing at the river. And that is where we're going to go with this idea of the location of the Susquehanna River at the 40th parallel is significant.
There's also, it looks like on this insert or the close-up of the Susquehanna River kind of fork right above the warrior. Mm-hmm. It looks like there's that cross.
There is.
I can't remember the name of. Is that the only?
Yes. So they're like 100. There are about 100 crosses on this map.
Okay.
And so what supposedly happened was wherever the crosses was as far as they explored with their own feet, and everything beyond that was relayed to them. And what was the standard operating procedure for explorers or discoverers is when they would go to a place, they would put in a marker, which would say, this is the property of Spain or the property of the British Empire. There are 100 of them on this map. Not one has ever been found, like in literal reality. So I don't know if that really happened, but that's one of the things which is questionable. Like everything is like really kind of questionable about this map. But the one X you're talking about is actually where the 40th parallel and the Susquehanna River are.
Wow.
If you were to go and look on the top of the map and trace that line all the way down to like the cross point of the Susquehanna River on the map, that's where you find that X, or about an inch away, probably.
Wow. So then it also is interesting to me that at the bottom of that map, there's this very like Masonic compass sort of looking. It is a compass. It's just not super traditional Masonic looking, but it's very similar at least. And under that, sort of like almost like a fleur-de-lis or like a sword through a.
There's so much interest. Like you could spend. They have like There's a lot of good stuff in there, yes. And I think that like a lot of stuff I haven't even seen. On a completely different topic, but I thought this was kind of fascinating, and I'm going to bring this up because you just mentioned that compass. Look above that. Then do you see the A in the middle of the map?
In the middle of the map, there's an A.
There's like you can almost see a triangle from like the bottom of the triangle is formed by the Chesapeake Bay, and then like a river off of it goes up, and then it turns down, and it makes a triangle. Do you see that? And there's an A in the middle of it, like okay. So that's the exact center. If you were to go and take the corners of this map and draw lines, and whenever you connect lines of the corners of any shape, it identifies the center. And that's exactly where the A is, in this triangle. And that does more or less correspond to a river in Virginia. This is where it gets really interesting. Right at the peak of that triangle, in material reality, and I did a whole post about this. It's kind of interesting. You can go find it on my Instagram feed. I did about a year ago. On that peak, in material reality, is a place called Triangle, Virginia.
Weird.
Triangle, Virginia is also known as Quantico, Virginia. It is the headquarters of the FBI. The FBI's headquarters are there because it was originally the OSS's headquarters, the predecessors of the CIA.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's right next to Prince William County. It's in Prince William Park County, and it's in next to something which is called Prince William Park.
Interesting.
Okay. Who's Prince William? Who's Prince William's mother? Queen Elizabeth, or I guess grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. Queen Elizabeth I is who Virginia is named after, the Virgin Queen. That's Queen Elizabeth I. Okay. So going back to the 40th parallel at the Susquehanna, and we could, once we get into this, if you're particularly interested in, we could really get into the goddess stuff, because that's when it gets really interesting. But this is just the foundation. So we're going to look at the 40th parallel in the Susquehanna River, and we're going to take that just as a hypothesis.
Can I point out one more thing?
Yes.
I keep getting drawn back to the kind of coiled up banner, the part where it's a very spirally sort of shape. And I was just looking at it more, trying to figure out why I am looking at it so deeply. And it's 666 is encoded there as well, because the coil just for some reason actually meets one of the lines, and it looks like a 6 in the very center, but there's 3 coils to that, so you could draw 6 with each one. I might be drawing. I might be like pulling straws.
I am not surprised to see that.
All right, sorry. Go on.
All right, so we're looking at this as a hypothesis because the hypothesis is the entire idea behind the scientific method. Like that's what made the scientific method so interesting, is you create a hypothesis and then you test it with no attachment to results, and then you go from that. So we're like, okay, well, the 40th parallel could refer to a very large stretch of land, but we're going to begin by looking at it as literally as possible. And so now we're going to go to, let's go to the slide, which is titled "The Sacred Geometry and Alchemical Symbols of the Susquehanna River at the 40th Parallel."
Okay, got it.
All right. So let's begin by looking at there are three images, rectangular images on the top, correct?
Yes.
Like photographs?
Yep.
Okay. The one on the left. So we're going to start there. Do you see where the Susquehanna River is labeled? On there?
Yes.
Okay. So, and then there is like a wavy line right to the left of the S in the Susquehanna River.
Yes.
That marks the western bank of the river.
Okay.
So you can't really tell because it's almost the same color as the land. That's why I'm pointing it out. Yeah. And then that white dotted line is exactly the 40th parallel. 40 degrees, 0 minutes, 0 seconds.
Okay.
It goes up to 40 degrees, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds before the 41st degree. There's 70 miles between parallels. Okay. So we're taking this as literally as we possibly can.
Yeah.
You see where that border line is.
Yeah.
And then you see where I have pointed, there's an arrow that says high point.
Yeah.
That's probably about a quarter mile from the river.
Okay.
So I'm just giving you like, this is how close we are.
Yeah.
If you go to the left of that point, probably right where the where that image ends, that's where David's house is.
Oh, wow.
Okay, that's how close his house is.
That's where we'll be.
So the point is, if you look really closely at the point, you could see like almost like a white dot.
Yeah.
Right above. Now, the second image to the right of it is a close-up of that white dot. And you can see there's this spiral and it's going up to like this circle. And then and then to the right of that is a close-up of the circle. Okay? So this is exactly at the 40th parallel at the Susquehanna River, almost as literally as you can take that. And then you scroll down a little right beneath that, and you're going to see examples of crescent moon and sun symbology in Rosicrucian and alchemical art.
Yeah.
Okay? And then you could also see that the pathway up to it is, it's a phi spiral. It's a golden ratio spiral. So what I like to think, and the reason why this park came into existence is because a real estate developer was going to go and build homes there, like high-end homes. But when they went to go and start the construction, they found human remains.
Wow.
And this is known Indian land. And it's like, it's a federal law that when you find human remains in known Native American land, you can't buy it. So it was taken over by, eminent domain, and they eventually built this park. There's a whole lot more interesting stuff. Who lived there? The Susquehannocks.
Ah, of course.
Okay, so we've got all of that stuff going on. So when you walk up to this is raised. That's why it's called High Point. It's got these amazing vistas. When you walk up, you're walking in all four directions. You turn, right, the whole way as you're rising in elevation. So you're actually going in all six directions. You're going up and down as well as you're on like an Indian burial ground. Like, this is like, when you think about like what you're actually doing when you walk up there. Wow. All right. So that's kind of interesting, right? So that's kind of confirmation that, well, they said that this was an important place, and now we go and we see there's something which ties into Rosicrucian symbology, which is right there. Doesn't necessarily mean anything. And I know the guy who designed the top of it, and I don't think he's like a member of the Rosicrucian order.
No, and I always want to point out when people see sort of this symbolism that comes out of certain people, I don't think it necessarily means anything about those people. I think that sometimes the whatever you want to call that, the morphogenetic field or whatever, just kind of comes out. Like a lot of artists painted and wrote and sang about things that seemed related to 9/11, and then 9/11 happened and they didn't know that it was happening. This is just something that kind of comes through the noetic sphere or whatever. And I don't think that we should point at people and like call them names because
I agree 100%. But I will say this about this guy. So what my sense is, the reason why this location was marked, the only thing which is very, very tangible in material reality, which would have been around in 1606 when John Smith made this map, was at this in the Susquehanna River, probably about 4 miles downstream from where we are. So really close to the the 40th parallel is the highest concentration of petroglyphs east of the Mississippi.
Wow. And
the guy who did this, and I sent you a package in the mail, which you should be getting shortly. There was a Tolteca leader by the name of Tlaquiel, and he was very, very interested in these petroglyphs and how they connect to Tula, the ancient Toltec city of Mesoamerica. So, I mean, like, this connects in a lot of different ways. And the guy who made this, he is the guy who was Tlaquiel's tour guide of the petroglyphs. So he connects that way. So, but this is going to get even freakier.
Okay.
So now I want you to go to, where is it? Go to the slide that's that's titled High Point Scenic Vista and the Jamestown Settlement.
All right.
Okay. And on the bottom half of the page, you're going to see a title that says the High Point Jamestown Connection.
Yes.
Okay. The first thing, this is the only place anywhere I could find the actual opening of High Point, because High Point became a source of great controversy in the area.
Oh.
For a variety of reasons, because the real estate developer sued the county, said, you're not giving us fair market value for what you told me, and like all sorts of stuff. And eventually they just opened up High Point, and they did it in this very like soft opening, because there was a stigma to it. So the only thing that I can find of when it opened, the actual date, was May 12th, 2007. It was in this guy's blog. And it makes sense, because I can confirm that 2007 is when it opened, and May 12th was a Saturday. And so, of course, they're going to open it on a weekend, like they're going to have like something.
Right.
So May 12th, 2007 is if you look down right below that, you'll see where it says Jamestown and Yorktown Settlement and Victory Center.
Yeah.
So that was a screenshot from the Jamestown website. And you'll see that says America's Anniversary Weekend. America's Anniversary Weekend, May 11th through 13th, 2007. Exact same weekend. You know, why is that America's Anniversary Weekend? Because that was the 400th anniversary of when Jamestown was established.
Right. Okay.
So now we've got John Smith Map, who's the leader of Jamestown, who points to the secret location. That secret location has a park there with alchemical symbols, and it opens up on the 400th anniversary of the actual establishment of Jamestown, which John Smith was a member of. And you could see beneath that, beneath where it says America's Anniversary Weekend, it says a Queen Elizabeth arrived. It's a big deal when royalty travels.
Yeah.
Like just in terms of just security and scheduling. Like the reason why she was there, because Jamestown's establishment was significant.
Yeah.
The Bushes were there. It was like all sorts of muckety mucks on the exact same day. And this is also 2 weeks after the Virginia Tech. Do you remember the Virginia Tech shooting?
Yeah.
It was back when shootings were big deals.
Right.
Virginia Tech in Virginia. Queen Elizabeth came and sat with all of the the students.
Wow.
Okay.
She absorbed all of their trauma and fed on it.
Exactly. Now go look on the right where it says the Rosicrucian significance of 400. You know what gematria is?
Yeah.
So what we have right here, you could see there's the Hebrew alphabet with the values of the numbers above it.
Mm-hmm.
So the Hebrew alphabet, you read from left to right. So to left is Aleph, and the very last letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Tav, like Mazel Tov. And the last letter has a value of 400, because 400 represents completion from a Kabbalistic Rosicrucian perspective. So now we can see the significance of the opening of, or maybe the closing at High Point Scenic Vista of what began at Jamestown 400 years to the day.
Wow.
Okay, so now we're starting to
and it corresponds with the planet Saturn, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Oops.
There's your 666.
Wait, where's the 666?
That you pointed out in the map.
Oh yeah.
And so Saturn corresponds with the cube, and the cube is a hexagram is a two-dimensional representation of a cube. Like if you take a cube and you cast its shadow, it makes a hexagram. And the hexagram, and that's how 666 and Saturn are all connected.
Yeah.
And the Seal of Solomon and the Israeli flag and all that sort of stuff. So we got that. Now there's one more piece I want to show you, and this is enough information I want to end you with for today.
Yes.
So now I want to bring you to the slide called The Invisible College and Other Oddities at the 40th Parallel.
All right. Got it.
And I want you to look at the map in the middle of it.
Looking.
All right. So do you see you see we've got the circle, and then we've got 3 or 4 small yellow circles in it.
Yes.
Okay. The center of that circle, the center yellow circle, if you were to look closely, that is High Point Scenic Vista.
Okay.
Okay. To the right is Franklin and Marshall College. Franklin and Marshall College was paid for. It was funded by Ben Franklin. That's why it's called Franklin and Marshall College. Ben Franklin is considered the high priest of the founding fathers. All right. This is his college. He started another college, which is University of Pennsylvania, but that doesn't have his name on it. This has his name. This has his money. This is his college.
Yeah.
And that was established in 1787. On the left of High Point, we see another college. It's called York College. York College was established in 1787. It was established by a guy, I think his name was John Adams, I think. Not the President John Adams, but that's what he was known, but shared the same name. John, so I'm going to take, how familiar are you with like Ben Franklin and that sort of stuff?
I don't know, loosely, probably.
Loosely. All right. So Ben Franklin started something which was called the Leather Apron Society.
Never heard of that.
And Leather Apron has a Masonic connection, right?
That makes
That's
sense.
what they call it, the apron, what they wear. And then it changed its name into the Junto, Junto. And then the Junto separated into 2 other organizations. One organization became the University of Pennsylvania, and the other organization became the American Philosophical Society. Okay? Keep in mind that Manly P. Hall's company, he had a company which published all of his works, was called the American Philosophical Society, or publishing. It's got American philosophical in it. When Ben Franklin started the American Philosophical Society, he created it as the American version of the Royal Society. The Royal Society was established shortly after Bacon's death. And Bacon wrote a book called The New Atlantis. And he talked about the invisible college. And the people who started the Royal Society, which is a learned society where all of these experts in their fields could come together and share information, which is what led to the Industrial Revolution and all that sort of stuff. It's the invisible college. The outer level is like, it's this, but there's a deeper, we know these guys are very, very deep mystic esoterics. And so when Ben Franklin, the high priest of the founding fathers, is saying the American Philosophical Society is the American version of the Royal Society, he's saying this is our invisible college.
Huh.
The guy who founded York, it began as York Academy and then became York College. He was a member of the American Philosophical Society. How many members were there? 30? Founded the exact same year as Franklin and Marshall. They are bisected exactly by the 40th parallel.
Yeah.
And this thing, High Point, appears 300 years later, right in the epicenter.
Right in the middle.
And then you have, and keep in mind that Lancaster City and York City are called the Rose Cities. All right, they're named after Lancashire in, if you've heard of the War of the Roses, that's the name of the 2 cities. So the 2 cities in Pennsylvania are named after it. And then you have on the top of it, on a perfect T-square, the circle on the top is Elizabethtown College, like Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And that opened up in 1899. Like, look at this, like, perfect alignment. And it's all pointing at the same location. Yeah. Whereby I've identified Big Indian and Little Indian Rock, that's where the petroglyphs are.
Oh, okay.
You see that on there? That's how close the petroglyphs are. I've identified where 3 Mile Island is, TMI.
Oh, okay. That's what that means. I was like, too much information.
So that's where like the big nuclear meltdown happened. And
Yeah.
TMI, I did a whole thing about how TMI is a reflection of Tiamat.
Huh. Which is the son of Saturn that he ate or something?
It's a Sumerian goddess who and then you could see how the angle of the T square is off by 23.5 degrees.
Which is the angle of the axis tilt.
Yes. So so this is what makes sense to me. Like by understanding how symbology works, by understanding the logic of magic, by doing this on the oldest river on the planet at the sacred spot. I don't know why it's sacred, but but everything is pointing here. This is what I say, like they keep pointing here. They keep pointing here. Yeah. They are putting they are making this the entire earth in alignment by doing it at 23.5 degrees on the oldest river with what happens there.
Hmm. So that whatever they're doing there will affect the whole earth.
Or at least that would be the logic.
Right.
That's what I would assume would be the logic. Now, one last thing. If you were to follow the line that goes up from the T square, you could see where it goes through Marietta.
Yeah.
Like right in the water. So that's where I used to live. That's where I moved from. I lived in Marietta. And if you look at where the word 40th parallel is on the map in that square, and then you go inside the circle, you could see it's almost covered by the white dotted line. It says Millersville.
Yes.
So I moved to Millersville.
Okay.
And so Millersville is the 4th college. It's not on the bottom point where you'd think it would be, but that's the invisible college.
Ah. And what's the name of that college?
Millersville.
Oh, it's called Millersville College.
This whole section, starting from where Big Indian Rock, Little Indian Rock is, all the way up to where it says Columbia. Columbia was on the short list of possible capitals of the United States. That's why it's the District of Columbia. That whole area inside the circle, that was originally set aside for William Penn to have that was the land he wanted. Of all of the land of all of Pennsylvania, that was his personal plot. Because it was the most, he could have had his choice of everything. That's where he chose to be.
Wow.
This whole area, this section has so much history. And if you could assume that history is a reflection of something else, it's just clues as to the significance. This is where your conference is being held.
Yeah.
So like, again, I don't know what this means yet, but like, I want you to begin to like settle into like, okay, I live across the country. And of all the places for me, I do this little thing to host this. It's right here. And the perfect house is, David developed that house for whatever reason. Like he had his vision. I have my vision of whatever. You have your vision. But it's all coming to right here on the solstice of 2020.
Of 2020. It's perfect. Well, I like all of this sort of, I mean, I could say this for most of my life, but especially in the last few years, there's been, really obvious kind of shoves from whatever energy, to push me in certain directions. And this is where it has led me pretty directly. So, I'm really excited to see what happens and how it goes down.
Yes, as am I. As am I.
Because it's also interesting, and I guess we'll get into this probably in later talks, but it's also interesting to me that my whole life I've been very, very aware of electronics as sort of, I want to say almost like a negative portal, or like a portal for negative entities, or really easily accessible, at least, networks that if we're not controlling with sovereignty than something else is. And so, and I've been sort of on this like war path against AI my whole life. And so, and I know that there's a lot that ties into this that has to do with computers and electronics and possibly AI. So that's also fascinating to me.
All right. Well, then, since you brought that up, I have to point out one more thing.
Okay.
And yeah, and I want you, I encourage you, if you're interested, I hope you are, to spend some time, like, just a little bit of time at it, like drip feed it into your consciousness.
Yeah.
So there's, because it's going to, there should be another attachment called Flyer, Essay Flyer.
Essay Primer?
Primer, there you go, that's it.
Yes. And I've seen this one before, I guess maybe in one of the shows that I've done with you or somewhere that you posted it.
All right. So do you see the map?
Yes.
In it? Did you? So that is the Susquehanna River and the Chesapeake Bay. The Chesapeake Bay is the Susquehanna River. They're the same thing.
Okay.
It's just the bay was formed 12,000 years ago, or at least that's what geologists tell us. And it's an estuary. The ocean flooded the river. And so that's the bottom part of the river. Do you see where C is? You see the letter C?
Yes.
So that C is located where the two branches of the river meet. The west branch, which begins where the B is, and the north branch that begins with A.
Okay.
Right there is a town called Sunbury. That is the place, the first place on the entire planet where 3-wired electrical distribution occurred.
Mm-hmm.
That's Thomas Edison's first place. He built a power plant and he built a building to distribute it.
Wow.
So 3-wire, that's very, very Kabbalistic. 3 wires are positive, negative, and neutral.
Right.
And like, remember, that's electricity can be distributed wirelessly. We knew that from Tesla. So like 3-wire is not a requirement for distributing electricity. This is where it began. Remember, it's all about firsts. That's what's important. So you see where D is?
Yes.
So D is where the river transitions from river to bay. Aberdeen Proving Grounds is right there. It's a military base. It's the very first. It
explode a bunch of stuff.
It's the first. It's where the first computer exists, and it's called ENIAC.
Like Enoch.
ENIAC.
Like
just
Enochian.
like it.
Yeah.
So this, when you talk about the electronics, this is the birthplace of it all. Like they were first done here. It's also where I say globalism begins on E. That's where Jamestown is.
Wow.
A, Baseball Hall of Fame. Baseball Hall of Fame is 150 feet from the source location of the river.
Wow.
B, that's where, the National Groundhog's Day celebration in Puxatawney, PA is?
Yeah.
That's where B is. These happen on key dates.
And they're very like all-American, everybody sort of, not everybody's watching, but a lot of like energy and intent goes into that.
You're 100% right. And we are coming on 2020 at the sweet spot on the solstice. Don't know what that means, but this is what's literally happening.
I love it. We don't need to know what it means. We just need to keep following our intuition and into that place.
Well, I think that's what part 2 of the Susquehanna mystery is, or at least that's what I'm hoping. Like, I want to take. I'm ready for it to go a step further. I'm ready for it to just be like go away from maps and like talking to like, all right, well, the world is crumbling around us. How would we use this?
Yeah, because I also feel like exactly the right people are going to be there. Like out of the people who show up, and maybe not everyone goes to every aspect of the event either. So even out of all the people who come, maybe not all of them will go, to this talk or that talk, or maybe not all of them will go on the tour. But I feel like the right people will be there at the right time too.
I agree completely with you. I included in the package which I sent you something which I called the Rites of the 40th Parallel, and there are 4 places where High Point Scenic Vista is one of them, where you can go, and I explain what the energy is there, what the history is there, what to look for, and what to do there. I think you may find that interesting as well.
Yes, that'll be exciting.
All right. So maybe next week when we could talk and we'll focus more so about like planning. Like, how about we do this? We'll alternate between like planning talks and like educational talks and like what you see, and then we'll just keep on moving forward that way.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, I don't know if I will release these or not, or however we'll do that, but we've got them.
We've got them. We've got them.
Cool.
Excellent. Well, okay, Lindsay, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care of yourself during your cleanse.
Yes.
And we'll talk next week.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Have
Bye-bye.
fun.
Oh.
Oh.
Max Egan.
Yes.
It's a one-on-one lesson, so do your homework. Make your dome hurt while up on earth. My bones are blessed from holy dirt. Vibes manifested to words that told me search for verbs and adjectives to describe birth. Worth more than one can speak. While the tongue beats a weak, a sour taste in your mouth, bittersweet. Words can also kill you when you sleep. Mind condition, low frequencies while the subconscious mind listens. I can tell a vision filled with lies disguised as truth, and spread it like the word to the youth. Watch the tube. A place where the God was booed is sorcery. To recreate the God forgery does more than meets the eye. Not too many know. Just hear me flow like the eye of Horus Penio. Yeah, not ready to leave until we believe we're free to go. You hear me? Run.
Sculpted from the ether, the material will eat ya. Stuck on this plane, lanes use jet fuel to greet ya. The dimensional three ain't meeting me on top of the fourth. Didn't climb Jacob's ladder to squab with a sword. Forged with ink drizzle, branched out. Try quiet your lamps now. Ascension past the matter, that they slam out they damn mouths. We ain't on land now, but they over understand. Sacrificing wisdom, hoarding dumber kosher wicked hands. Putting faith in worthless worship of the mortals. Artificial portals, mass ingestion of the black goo. Bioengineered morsels, conversing with machine elves. Bypassing baggage, they stuck on Android screens. Now I'm scrolling emerald tablets. Moloch living lavish, off the backs of the savage. Them clasp hands at the Sabbath. Smack of energy damage, they done twisted the tongues. With nanotech in the lungs, the awakening's begun. All they really can do is fucking run.